for our first question, who or what made you get into teaching?
Okay. For most of my life, I had two little brothers. I mean, they're still with me, but, you know, I've always kind of been a teacher, you know, helping out with homework. But then when I got into high school, I realized that I had some ability in it, and I was kind of teaching some kids, especially in my physics class, which was pretty cool. And then when I got into college, I really liked physics.
And like you mentioned, like you had two younger brothers that you taught, but did you like always know you wanted to be a teacher growing up, or was there any other, like what did you, like you mentioned like you wanted to be a doctor, but was there
I'd say I definitely had a lot of ideas. I mean, when I was a really little kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Wanted to be an astronaut for a really long time until I realized like being stuck in space is kind of a bummer. Like, you know, you're in a spaceship and you really can't go anywhere. And like I didn't see any way of that being possible. Like I always saw like astronauts as superheroes, and I didn't see any kind of way. So maybe if I had different science teachers or something, like, you know, a different view of myself as a scientist, who knows, I'd be in space now. And then I wanted to be a doctor. I also, when I was in college, I was an EMT for a little bit. I was an EMT basic. I had a license back in 2012, 2013, and so I was riding on ambulances, and like the medical field, like trauma, like, you know, something happens, go to the emergency room, that kind of doctor, that seems very exciting to me. If I did anything in the medical field, it might be being a paramedic, because they're basically the doctors of outside the hospital. Right. You know, if you get into trouble on a plane, you want a paramedic. You don't want a doctor. You want a paramedic, because they know how to do stuff on an ambulance. Right. They know how to take a pen and like, you know.
Yeah. Were you majoring in physics, like all through? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I was in a specific program called the Bachelor of Science program, which lined up really well with my pre-med requirements. It involved also, in addition to the physics major, also taking biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and kind of like a basic familiarity with things. I also had to take an English course, which was when I had to read the Divine Comedy, which was kind of cool, but very different than everything else. But most of what I did was physics. I also had kind of like a side track of every now and then taking computational type classes. In freshman year, I took a computational class about just the idea of computer simulation, and we simulated gravitational bodies, we simulated infection type algorithms, like one person infected, 3 people infected, you know, you do those exponential kind of models. There was something else, traffic, modeling traffic. Right. I'm very fascinated by traffic, and if you could just give me a whole pile of money to do nothing else but like something I really wanted to do, it might just be like simulating people walking around on sidewalks and like traffic, and try to figure out how to make that stuff better. Because there's a whole big city of, you know, people in the way of each other out there. There might be a way to do it better. That stuff really fascinates me. And I did little classes here and there about computational physics, where you take physics, you change it a little bit so that it works on a computer. And, you know, the fact that computers do calculations and like real life doesn't. So like there are some places where you might be wrong, or you might want to simplify something in a certain way, or be aware of certain things, or do something efficiently. So like there's so many different kinds of physics computing that are really cool. Even games, you know, like, you know, you throw something in the game and if it looks realistic, that's because of physics programmed in it. So there's a lot of really cool physics simulations.
What is one thing that you enjoy most about teaching?
Getting to work with so many different people, a lot of different. It's easy to get stuck in your own bubble. Like, you know, you have your friends are into the same kind of stuff, you're on the same websites, you're all like sending each other the same memes and all that. And you're in maybe even a certain neighborhood of the city or something. But when you're teaching in a public school, and you're working in a public school, you work with so many people, so many different people who are different than yourself, and that perspective is really eye-opening. Like people, there's so many different cultures here, there's so many different religions here, there's so many different, well maybe not that many different religions here, but you know, there's a lot, there's diversity.
Right.
There's so many different types of life that I wouldn't have come into contact with had I not been a teacher. And I think that's just a wonderful gift that kind of comes up all the time. Like even when kids are being annoying or something like that, they're doing it in a particular way, and they're not doing it the way that I would. That's fascinating. You know? I was just asking people in class whether they say how they pronounce the town that we're in, whether it's Sheepshead or Sheepshed.
Yeah, I remember you asked me that as well.
More people say Sheepshed than Sheepshead. And like I guess I'm saying it wrong. You know? Like that's something that like weird little things like that you learn.
What are some of your hobbies?
Some of my hobbies. Well, I've got tons of wacky hobbies. I've taught myself how to program, except in the cases where I was taught by somebody, like maybe a teacher of the past or something like that. I really like keeping current with the news. I'd be lying to say that like keeping myself safe hasn't become some degree of a hobby, because things are constantly changing, the virus is constantly changing, the ways in which we have to be safe are constantly changing, and also the rules are constantly changing around us. So like thinking about, you know, what is the best decision to make in those circumstances, and then like not have to think about it the whole rest of the day is nice. So I also have taught myself how to play the ukulele, which is really fun. I never learned formally. It was all like YouTube and websites and stuff. I don't know how to read music. I don't know how to do really anything in any kind of formal way, but you know, if you teach yourself how to read, you know, if you play, it's great, you know, like, so, you know, don't get down on yourself for not doing something the right specific way. And I also can unicycle. I can ride a unicycle, which is pretty funny. And maybe I could send over a video of that. It's been a while, but I'm also really into learning other languages. I can read for the most part, the Arabic alphabet. I can kind of read the Cyrillic alphabet. I really like alphabets and stuff, but also I just want to learn other languages. I want to learn like the way that students are talking to each other. Like, I know Spanish. But that's the only one that I can speak in any bit fluently and I can understand. Like, but I'm trying to like learn other languages and pick up the stuff and the words that kids say here, because we have a specific population of kids from certain parts of the world, and the Arabic they speak is different from the Arabic spoken in, say, Egypt or something. So if I go to Google Translate and I figure out what a word is, that might be taken from Egypt, but I want to know what the words that the students say in this school.
Right.
And when kids doodle stuff on the board, and maybe it's not a good word, I ask, like, what is this word?
Right.
Tell me. And they say, oh, you don't want to know. I'm like, no, I do want to know. Because it's learning. It's learning. I really like languages. Languages are cool.
And for our last question, what is one piece of advice you would give anyone at OHS?
Oh, okay. I'd say don't be too stubborn with your plans. Be flexible. There's so many ways in which that comes up. I can think of the way in which I kind of changed careers and came into education, and I think I'm finding much more fulfillment than I would being a doctor or something like that. Like I was bitter. But like, you know, be flexible. Your trajectory might change in the middle of college, and you have to decide whether or not to go with that or not, because you might lead a life of regrets, and you might end up going and make that change like years later or something like that.
Right.
And no one can really, you know, you got to kind of get that advice of whether that change is worth making or not. But for me, I had the advice of every single doctor I ever spoke to was saying, you don't want to be a doctor. It's not the job that you're envisioning. And so, like, the number of people who came up to me and said, like, for this reason, this reason, these reasons, I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I should just keep studying what I'm studying and see what I can make of it. And I didn't, like, I knew I was going to have a physics degree, but I went into it being flexible, thinking, I have a physics degree, this is widely applicable, it could be used in business, it could be used in a bunch of different fields that have nothing to do with physics, because you know a lot of math and you know a lot of like systems type thinking and stuff like that. So, you know, I knew that there were a lot of directions I could go, and physics teaching was very much one of them. And I was able to get a scholarship and a stipend out of it too. So like that paid my bills, that, you know, for that entire year in graduate school, and it was all because I was keeping things open, you know? And so I would just, everybody has this vision of like what they want to be when they were 3 years old. You don't have to stick to that, you know? That's all I can do.